Welcome to another episode of Fairfax Files. Thank you for clicking on this video. I appreciate your company. Now, this is such a stunning turn of events. Bryan Kohberger, I know you clicked on this thumbnail because you saw that, yes, he is actually being convicted. And a stunning turn of events that occurred just days ago, guys. In July 2025, Bryan Kohberger, the former criminology PhD student accused of brutally murdering 4 University of Idaho students, has pleaded guilty to all charges against him. Yes, and this development brings to a close nearly 3 years of legal proceedings, investigative work, and agonizing uncertainty for the families of the victims. Now, no one's calling this guy a hero, but it's quite interesting that he realized his own demise. Today, we'll walk through the timeline of the case for those of you who may only know a limited amount about it. But also, for those of you who do know a lot about it, we're going to revisit everything, examine the charges that were brought against Kohberger. We're going to analyze the evidence that led to his arrest and discuss the recent plea agreement that has divided the victims' families and, of course, shocked legal observers. And not only that, a lot of people on TikTok and Instagram and right here on YouTube. Let's begin with the night that changed everything. November 13, 4 University of Idaho students were brutally murdered in their off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho. The victims were Ethan Chapin, only age 20, Xana Kernodle, 20 as well. They were dating. Madison Mogen, age 21, and Kaylee Gonsalves, age 21. The students were found in a 3-story house on King Road, just blocks from the university campus. The scene was horrific. All 4 victims had been stabbed multiple times with what investigators would later determine was a large fixed blade knife. Likely a K-bar style military knife. The house also contained 2 other female roommates who were present during the attack, but were not harmed. Thank God. But I'm pretty sure they're going to be traumatized for a very long time to come. These surviving roommates would later provide crucial testimony about what they heard and saw that night, including one roommate who reported seeing a figure in dark clothing and a mask leaving the house. The murders sent shockwaves through the small college town of Moscow, a community of roughly only 25,000 people, where violent crime was rare. The University of Idaho campus was placed on lockdown. Students were advised to stay in groups, and many left town entirely as fear gripped the community. The investigation into these murders was massive and complex, as you could imagine. The Idaho State Police, working in conjunction with local authorities and the FBI, processed one of the most extensive crime scenes in Idaho's history. What made this case particularly challenging was the lack of immediate, obvious suspects. This wasn't a domestic violence situation or a robbery gone wrong. It appeared to be a targeted attack by someone who may have been unknown to the victims. Investigators collected hundreds of pieces of evidence, including DNA samples, fingertips, and digital evidence. They conducted thousands of interviews and followed up on numerous tips from the public. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit created a profile of the likely perpetrator, describing someone who was likely familiar with the area and may have had some connection to the victims or the university. One of the most crucial pieces of evidence would turn out to be a knife sheath found at the scene. This sheath was discovered near one of the victims' bodies, contained touch DNA that would ultimately lead investigators to their suspect. Investigators also examined digital evidence, including cell phone data and surveillance footage from the area. They tracked vehicle movements and analyzed patterns of behavior in the days and weeks leading up to the murders. The investigation expanded beyond Idaho, with authorities following leads across multiple states. They were particularly interested in white Hyundai Elantra vehicles that had been spotted in the area around the time of the murders. As 2022 drew to a close, investigators began focusing on Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old criminology PhD student at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington, just 10 miles from the Idaho border and 15 minutes from Moscow. Kohberger had been studying criminal justice and criminology with a particular interest in violent crime. He had completed a master's degree in criminal justice at DeSales University in Pennsylvania and was pursuing his doctorate at Washington State University. What made Kohberger a person of interest was a combination of factors. He drove a white Hyundai Elantra that matched the description of a vehicle seen in the area. His cell phone data showed he had been in the Moscow area multiple times before the murders, including several late-night trips that seemed to have no obvious purpose. Most significantly, DNA evidence collected from the knife sheath found at the crime scene matched Kohberger's genetic profile. This DNA match was confirmed through genetic genealogy techniques, similar to those used in other high-profile cases. Kohberger's behavior also raised red flags. Colleagues and students at Washington State University reported that his demeanor changed noticeably after November 12, 2022. One student mentioned that he suddenly began giving all students perfect grades, which was unusual for him. On December 30th, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. He had driven cross-country for the winter break, and authorities had been monitoring his movements. The arrest was coordinated between multiple law enforcement agencies, and Pennsylvania State Police was working with FBI agents, and they surrounded the family home in the early morning hours, and they took Kohberger into custody without incident. At the time of his arrest, Kohberger was found to have cleaned his car extensively, and you know what that usually means, and had disposed of potential evidence. Investigators noted that his appearance had changed. He had lost a significant amount of weight and appeared to have shaved his body hair. Now, a lot of people shave their body hair, but it seems like this had a little bit of a different reason. The arrests brought some relief to the Moscow community, of course, and the families of the victims. They felt a little bit more like the police were doing their job. But you know what? It also raised new questions. What was Kohberger's motive? How had he selected these particular victims? Was this his first violent crime? A lot of people were asking, did he do this before and got away with it? On January 5th, 2023, Bryan Kohberger was formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. These charges carried the possibility of the death penalty under Idaho law. The murder charges were based on the allegation that Kohberger willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation killed Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Gonsalves. The burglary charge alleged that Kohberger entered the residence with the intent to commit a crime. That's premeditation, guys. This charge was significant because it could provide additional penalties and demonstrated the prosecutorial theory that Kohberger had entered the home with criminal intent. Initially, Kohberger pleaded not guilty to all charges and indicated through his defense team that he intended to fight the charges vigorously. His lawyers suggested they would challenge the evidence and potentially present an alibi defense. And of course, they tried their best. There was a lot that was going up and down, a lot of delays that we're going to talk about. The prosecution, led by Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson, indicated they would seek the death penalty. This decision was based on the aggravating factors present in the case, including the number of victims, 4, the brutality of the murders, and the premeditated nature of the crimes. The legal proceedings in the Kohberger case were marked by numerous delays and complex legal motions. The case was originally scheduled for trial in October 2024, but this date was pushed back multiple times due to various legal issues. One of the major disputes centered around the admissibility of genetic genealogy evidence. Kohberger's defense team argued that the methods used to identify him violated his constitutional rights and that the evidence should be suppressed. The evidence also filed motions challenging the death penalty itself, arguing that Idaho's capital punishment statute was unconstitutional. They sought to have the death penalty removed as a possible sentence because they did get the DNA proof, the family match through genealogy. You know, those places that people go and they send in a sample of their swab or their blood and they get a genealogy match. That's how they found out the match. And the defense was saying it was unconstitutional. It was against his rights as a person being blamed, being charged for murder, that it was not the right way for them to collect that evidence. There were also disputes about the venue for the trial. The defense argued that extensive media coverage and public statements by local officials had made it impossible for Kohberger to receive a fair trial in Latah County. The case was eventually moved to Ada County and Boise, Idaho's capital city. Throughout this period, the families of the victims expressed frustration with the delays. The Gonsalves family, in particular, described the legal process as a hamster wheel of emotions, hearings, motions, and delayed decisions. And a shocking turn of events. In late June 2025, prosecutors announced that Bryan Kohberger had agreed to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The plea agreement, which was outlined in a letter sent to the victims' families, stipulated that Kohberger would receive life in prison for each murder count, plus up to 10 years for the burglary charge. These sentences would run consecutively, meaning Kohberger would never be eligible for release. The deal also included a provision that Kohberger would waive his right to appeal his conviction and sentence. This was significant because it would prevent years of additional legal proceedings and appeals. For the prosecution, the plea deal represented a guaranteed conviction and life sentence without the risk and expense of a lengthy death penalty trial. Death penalty cases are notoriously complex and expensive, often taking years to resolve and facing significant appeals. And we know, once people are on death row, they start to appeal over and over again because it's really the only thing that they have to do that gives them purpose, even if they are guilty. However, the plea agreement in this case also meant that many questions about the case would remain unanswered. Yes, and that's angering a lot of people. There would be no trial, testimony detailing exactly what happened that night, no cross-examination of witnesses, and no opportunity for the public to hear all the evidence. A lot of people are enraged. They feel that even though he admitted guilt, there should be some type of explanation as to why he did what he did. Like, was he the dude that was online asking all those questions under the alias Papa Roger? You know, kind of like the same last name as Elliot Rodger. People are asking a lot of questions, and it seems like none of them are going to be answered. On July 2nd, 2025, Bryan Kohberger appeared before Judge Stephen Hippler in Ada County District Court in Boise, Idaho, for his change of plea hearing. The courtroom was packed with media representatives, family members of the victims, and members of the public. During the hearing, Kohberger formally pleaded guilty to all 5 accounts against him. When asked by Judge Hippler if he was guilty of each charge, Kohberger responded, "Guilty to each count." The hearing was described as tense but quiet. Kohberger appeared calm and composed as he admitted to the murders that had shocked the nation. He answered the judge's questions in a clear voice and confirmed that he understood the consequences of his plea. The plea hearing lasted approximately 45 minutes. Kohberger's defense team stood by their client but did not make any public statements about his decision to plead guilty. Judge Hippler accepted the guilty plea and scheduled sentencing for July 23, 2025. The sentencing hearing will provide an opportunity for the families of the victims to present impact statements and for the judge to formally impose the life sentences. The reactions from the victims' families to the plea agreement were mixed, highlighting the complex emotions surrounding the case. Madison Mogen's family expressed support for the plea deal. Her father, Ben Mogen, told reporters that he viewed the agreement as an opportunity to avoid the pain and spectacle of a trial and to focus on healing. The family seemed relieved that they would not have to endure a lengthy trial process. However, other family members had different reactions. Some expressed disappointment that they would not get to hear all the evidence presented in a trial setting. They wanted to understand exactly what happened that night and felt that the plea deal left too many questions unanswered. The Gonsalves family, who had been particularly vocal throughout the legal process, had not made extensive public statements about the plea agreement as of the time of this recording. Legal experts noted that such divided reactions among victims' families are not uncommon in high-profile cases. Each family processes grief and seeks justice in their own way, as they should, and what feels right to one family may not feel right to another. They also want answers. They want to know the details. They wanted to hear Bryan speak and defend himself, but also be honest. But there's no way that he could do both. If he's guilty, then he's being honest right now, and he wouldn't be able to defend himself. You see, the Bryan Kohberger case represents one of the most significant criminal cases in recent Idaho history. From the brutal murders that shocked a small town to the extensive investigation that spanned multiple states, this case has captured national attention and raised important questions about campus safety, criminal justice, and the nature of violence itself. With Kohberger's guilty plea, the legal proceedings are effectively over, but the impact of these crimes will continue to be felt for years to come. The University of Idaho community is still healing, and the families of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Gonsalves continue to grieve their losses. These were young students. The case also serves as a reminder of the importance of thorough criminal investigations and the power of forensic evidence, particularly DNA analysis and genetic genealogy, in solving complex cases. As we await the formal sentencing on July 23, 2025, we remember the 4 young lives that were tragically cut short and the families who have endured unimaginable pain while seeking justice. I, for one, am happy that the DNA proved who it was. The investigators were right on point. The FBI and everyone came together and they nailed this criminology student who thought he was going to get away with what he did. He admired, in my opinion, criminals who have done this before, and he didn't get away with it. Please let me know in the comments below, did you know the whole time that he was guilty? Or did you feel like maybe he wasn't and the evidence wasn't proving itself? Do you feel that he said he's guilty and he's not? What are your thoughts? I want to know. This has been another episode of Fairfax Files. Thank you for joining me as we examined this complex and tragic case. We'll continue to follow developments in this together and other cases that shape our understanding of criminal justice in America and around the world. Thank you so much for joining. Please take a moment to subscribe and make sure you hit that like button so this video can be placed in the algorithms from Facebook. Guys, I'll see you next week. Please be good to yourself out there and be good to others. Keep safe. And remember, Tomorrow is not promised, so make the best of today. Enjoy your weekend.